Welcome to the Upshot, Multi-World Disc Golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I'm Charlie Eisenhood, the editor. Joining me, Josh Mansfield. It is Tuesday, December 6th. The winter is here, and it is cold now. It's been cold in Idaho, but now it's cold in New York. So we're rocking and rolling in the off season. Hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. And let's see. Although things are cold, Josh, things are also starting to heat up a little bit. We are far removed from the hot stove of last season, when by this time there were already monumental sponsorship moves, people breaking contracts, all kinds of crazy stuff. This year, definitely a lot more calm, but we're starting to see some moves percolating, and I think we're going to hear about a lot more stuff over the next 4 weeks, especially once we get past January 1st. So shall we dive into the moves over the last week or so?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So first up, we already talked about Chandler Kramer and, of course, Nico. But big news last week. Paige Shue, formerly Bjerkes, has announced that she's leaving Dynamic Discs. And in so doing, suggests that she is going to be returning to competitive play in a more meaningful way. Now, Paige has not really played a lot of elite disc golf over the last really 2-3 years since the pandemic, and has had a kid, still been involved in disc golf, and her father, Doug, works at Dynamic Discs. So this has a little bit of shades of the Kona leaving Innova thing, Josh, but we don't know where Paige is going yet. Are you surprised to see her leaving the Dynamic Disc sponsorship? I mean, she's been there her whole career, including when she was a child, basically.
Yeah, I really am surprised, and the biggest thing that I can think about is it's twofold. Number one, she announces she wants to go back to competing full time. This probably means less of an emphasis on other aspects of the business, right? I know she has. I don't know. Has she been a ton involved in social media? I don't know if she even has, like, with the company.
Lately,
I don't know. Not as much.
I think so.
So she comes back. I wonder if, either one, she said, I'd like the money to start touring again. I need a salary, entry fees, a van, right? The whole 9 yards if she's going to start going on tour again. And they say, sorry, we don't think you're worth that much. Or they wanted to attach stipulations about, like, social media and other media and kind of like the holistic side that we kind of think of as for Kona, right? So maybe a similar, not as highly priced deal, but a similar deal to an evaluation of Kona, where they see Paige Shue as being kind of a face of Dynamic Discs, because she's a world champion with Dynamic Discs back in 2018. It would make a lot of sense that would be kind of part of a contract, and that may just not be Paige's interest right now. So either of those cases I could see as being the legitimate about why she's choosing to leave Dynamic Disc. She says it's on good terms, so I think it's probably strictly a business decision.
Sure.
Some company is offering her more money and a contract that suits what she wants out of next season better. I'm excited to hear that announcement, because I want to interview her and ask her, what exactly did you go shopping for when you decided you were ready to go back on tour? And I think that will inform us a lot about why this decision was made.
Totally. I think it's just, we ascribe a lot of meaning to people working, being sponsored by a company that they have family working for. Yes. But, like, we probably shouldn't, because at the end of the day, it's a sponsorship deal. And, like, 9 times out of 10, players are choosing to take the money. And that's totally understandable and logical. And who knows? Dynamic Discs has a lot of money allocated already to sponsorships. We know this.
Yes.
And product maybe isn't moving as much as they had hoped. I mean, I have heard anecdotal evidence that Trilogy and particularly Dynamic Discs have not been selling as much as some other brands. They've been sitting on shelves more. They're getting discounted more during Black Friday. I mean, obviously it's impossible to know without doing like a wide review of dealer networks and how that's going. But considering the amount of money that they're putting into player sponsorships now, maybe it just wasn't in the cards financially for them to say, okay, we know you won a world championship, but you haven't played in 3 years. You're not really that relevant with the players that, today. How many people who play disc golf don't even really know who Paige Shue is? I mean, I know that sounds like a silly question, but there's so many players who started playing in 2020 who would have no reason to know who she is unless they go back and like watch past tournaments.
And even if they go back and watch past tournaments, she was then Paige Bjerkes.
Right. So you might not even make the connection unless you're like a hardcore fan.
Super easy to miss. Right. Very, very easy. Right. Yeah.
And
so yeah,
she still got it, I think. If you look at the way that she played in limited time this year, right? She outplayed Kona at like every event she was at. Now, I don't know if that's the bar. I mean, I just feel like we're talking about the Mendoza line at this point. But
yeah, but I mean, that's still like you just compared her to DD's flagship player.
I know that's my. I mean, that's the point, right?
That's a good point.
She was 15th at Throw Pink.
That's not bad.
It's not bad. She hasn't been blowing the doors off anybody. That's for sure. I mean, she didn't cash at DDO. She was 27th at Idlewild. But keep in mind, who even knows how much she's been practicing?
Right. Oh yeah.
I think she has the talent to be a top 10 player in the world again, because I think she pretty clearly was at the height of her game in 2018. And she's an interesting player because she's like Owen Scoggins. She's an underpowered thrower that has a really, really good skill set around the rest of her game. And I don't know that she's going to be able to be winning another world championship, but we watched what Owen Scoggins could do this year with an underpowered arm, and it is a very impressive skill that she's able to finish up in the top as much as she does. So anyway, I think it's an interesting thing. I think certainly the biggest sign for me about this is that it signals that Paige is going to start playing more, which I think is great. It'll be fun to have another strong player back in the mix at top of FPO.
Do you think Paige could win an Elite Series event this season?
Oh, let's put that in our upcoming segment. Okay. What if? Right. What if? Write it down so we don't forget. It can be the first one we do. Next hot stove note. Stacey Haas signs a 2-year extension with MVP. Stacey Haas had that breakthrough performance, the Silver Series this year. Josh, what do you think about this deal?
It's a good deal. It makes sense. Stacey's not moving plastic right now enough to really justify a big contract move. MVP was her first sponsor. She was one of our early interviews on the Upshot interview series last season.
That's right.
Talked about how she was still in high school this season. So this is going to be her first 2 years out of high school where she has to focus exclusively on disc golf. I think it makes sense for MVP to take that risk, and not even a risk, but to kind of signing her senior year of high school. It was likely to be something that risked having split attention, and now that you've kind of put in the money and the work in the first season, I think they're hoping that they get to see a little bit more fruits of that sponsorship going into these next 2 seasons. It makes sense for both sides, and I'm not surprised that she's not moving for somewhere else right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, cheap deal, brand that needs FPO, up and coming player, total no brainer for MVP, and it makes sense that there's continuation here. I think Stacey has a very good chance to become a solid top 25 pro this year. And we saw the upside at Tallahassee when she won.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, she was really impressive that weekend. She clearly has the skills, and I think it's more about the consistency for her. But she had some nice moments this year. Just certainly regularly top 10 on the Silver Series. It's kind of the progression that you would expect. And won the Michigan state championships. I don't know that really means all that much, but clearly a great player, and it's just a matter of like how high is her ceiling. I think we've seen glimpses, but it's about can you do it week in, week out.
When we talk about Michigan, though, we often talk about Discraft. So it's, for MVP to have someone winning the Michigan State championship,
yep,
that probably could do more than we'd think.
Matt Bell re-ups for 2 years with ThoughtSpace Athletics. So this is not an exclusive sponsor setup. Remember, he's got an EV7 deal as well for his putter. But he is kind of like the flagship player that's sponsored by ThoughtSpace. He's back. Makes sense to me. Didn't really see Matt Bell going anywhere else, and I guess it's working for ThoughtSpace as well.
I would like to see ThoughtSpace because the DGA has done a lot of ads around Andrew Marweed and Katrina Allen, but Andrew Marweed isn't as high. Katrina Allen makes sense, but Andrew Marweed, high profile ish, but not a top player per se. And to build that advertisement series around Andrew Marweed is still a compelling one that I think got people interested, at least in a couple DGA discs. I'd like to see more of that from ThoughtSpace. I think Matt Bell is very easy to market person. He's very likable. He has a very powerful skill set in his putting, and obviously he's got the EV7 putters. So either one, I think Matt Bell has some untapped advertisement potential right now, but it makes sense why he's staying.
All right, so we've got a lot of players who are up for new contracts. Either they're on one-year deals, lots of those, or there's a few people who are on multi-year deals that are coming to a close at the end here of 2022. So we're kind of trying to get a sense of, well, what kind of dominoes are going to fall here as we look ahead to the beginning of 2023. And we know that, there's already some buzz about a few companies making some moves. For one, Lone Star and Mint down in Texas, both rumored to be making some pickups that could shake things up a little bit. So we're doing kind of a what if segment today where we think about hypothetical things that could happen and what it might mean. So I think we could maybe start here with the hot stove, Josh, and think about some potential what ifs here. And I think the first thing I want to start with is, what if we see a bunch of Texas players get picked off by Lone Star and Mint? I think this is a very realistic scenario, and there's a bunch of Texas pros who are up for new contracts this year. So let me give you some names, Josh. Maria Oliva, Alexis Mondahano, Lisa Fakis, Holland Handley. That's your FPO selection. Emerson Keith, Brad Williams, Connor O'Reilly, Robert Burridge. Few names over on the MPO side. Most of those people on one-year deals, although Emerson Keith coming off a 3-year with Latitude 64. I think maybe the best player on that list right now in MPO is Bradley Williams. Hard for me to see him leaving Innova, just given the long history that he's got there. But, player like Emerson Keith, player like Maria Oliva, they feel like a little bit more potentially prone to making a move. I mean, Maria and Haley King are good friends, but and I think maybe enjoy playing on Team Innova together. But then again, Haley King was on a 1-year too. So
yes,
she is. What do you think could happen here?
I think Maria Oliva makes a ton of sense to steal by either Mint or Lone Star. She is a player who is very clearly got the talent to compete at the top level, but I don't think she hit her ceiling this season. And she's a young player who could give you a couple of good years, and I really think would be a smart steal for either of those companies. I think on the MPO side, Emerson Keith has got to be your pick there. He has not... I mean, I'll pull up his results right now, but just in terms of the feel anecdotally, Emerson Keith did not have as good of a 2022 season as he had in previous years. He's not making coverage as often. Let's see, where does he end up finishing? 28th on the Pro Tour. Not bad. Got some top 10s. Texas States, he was 8th. He was 5th at Champions Cup, which is, that's a great finish. But it was a kind of season where even at his good finishes, I don't remember seeing a lot of him. And I really just don't think Emerson Keith is moving the kind of plastic that a multi-year contract with Latitude 64, if you were to re-up, would justify. But, we talk about this all the time. The best thing that players can do in order to make lots of money is move manufacturers.
Make a move.
Yep. That will move plastic. And so Emerson Keith, I think, would be a really smart signing for either of those companies as well. I don't know. A lot of these players would make sense because none of them are the top players of any team. I guess Emerson Keith probably is, but I think that when I think of Latitude 64, I think of a lot of their European potential.
I mean, that from this year, that makes a lot of sense.
Right. And so none of these feel like the top players of any team. So a lot of them feel like they would make really good players for smaller companies like Lone Star and Mint. And dare I say, a secession of the Texas players may be in the cards. I couldn't help myself. It just feels like they're.
Well, I mean, you've got these Texas companies that are maybe having their own little mini talent war, and you've got they're flush with marketing dollars. They are being very aggressive. And so you could imagine that they would be willing to pay more or / overpay for players who are in their area that know them, that, maybe they're just looking for that Texas representation. Speaking of, this is not a Texas player, but somebody who I think is very potentially going to get picked off, Cap Merch. Cap Merch moving to Lone Star would make a very lot of sense. It would make a lot of sense.
All the sense. I mean, that I think moves to an entirely different topic, though. Innova is known for 1-year deals.
Yes. And
I think there's a chance that Innova gets burned this season with these manufacturers who are vying for talent amongst each other. In Innova, the ones that come right to mind, besides those already mentioned, right? Lisa Fakis, Maria Oliva, Bradley Williams. You also have Kat Merch, Emily Beach, Haley King, Joel Freeman, all who are on 1-year deals.
So many. And, I mean, you name an Innova player, they're probably on a 1-year deal.
Right. Multi-year deal ending is also Jeremy Colling. Feels very unlikely that Colling leaves Innova. Same boat as Sexton. I don't know where Sexton's at in his contract. But he's never going to walk away from the Firebird money. There's no way. Yeah, you have a money printing machine. Why would you leave? So neither of those make as much sense. But those lists: Kat Merch, Emily Beach, Haley King, Joel Freeman, all of those are up for grabs. And
I mean keep going. Anthony Barella, there's a lot. You again name an Innova player.
Anthony Barella re-upped though.
Did he already re-sign? Not that I've heard.
I thought so.
Usually Innova doesn't make any announcements until...
That's true.
Right at the end of December or the beginning of January. And, they kind of just drop it all at once. And it's here's all these people who re-signed. I think, for better and worse, Innova is the standard bearer, right? They have very strong base contracts. Players want to throw in. They have a monster lineup. They have great reputation for having all the possible disc slots that you could possibly need. And it's the biggest brand. It's got the longest history. There's a lot of reasons that I think players gravitate to wanting to go with Innova. But I think, when players are maybe disgruntled for whatever reason, we see them make a move potentially to a smaller manufacturer. I mean, remember when James Conrad made the move to MVP from Innova, MVP was not the brand they are today. I mean, they've grown a lot. Of course, in part because of that deal. But it's interesting to see how this could shake out. And it's hard to assess which players are feeling I want to change versus ones who are the best deal I'm going to get is at Innova. So that's just an interesting side note. Go ahead.
Here's the biggest thing that I think about when I think of Innova. It's been consistently said by players that Innova is two things. Number one, it's very performance-based. they focus on the golf, right? That's what Calvin always says, and that's why he re-ups with Innova, is because all they care about is him playing golf. He doesn't have to do all the social media and the videos, and that's just not the expectation that I have gotten the impression from a lot of players of what Innova does. That means if players have a strong social media or other entertainment value presence, they may feel undervalued by an Innova deal that highly prioritizes performance. The second thing is we know that it is also very bonus heavy and gives those incentives based on not just like performance as a general thing, but you earn more money when you perform well. So players who maybe had slow seasons and didn't get the bonuses they were kind of expecting, combined with someone who feels like they have more to offer than just what they do on the course, I think those are very likely to be the ones that get pulled from an Innova team and are going to feel less than satisfied.
I think the thing about Innova is that, they're mostly going to just offer you the contract that they offer you. You're not going to get a special deal unless you're a Calvin Heimberg level player, a Nate Sexton level player that's, going to merit them not only giving you a different kind of contract than the standard issue, but also maybe give you multiple years. So that's, they're say take it or leave it. And they have a huge team. Obviously, plenty of people take it. So the thing that is interesting is that, on the other hand, you've got a company like Dynamic Discs where they have obviously gone way out of their way to make some special deals for particular players. So they do the big offseason last year, the new warehouse, huge fanfare, that got the choppers, they got the press conference. It's a crazy deal. But now, you wonder, are they feeling like they need to lean out a little bit? The paid shoot thing definitely feels like a little bit of a canary in the coal mine. Could we see Dynamic Discs lose key free agents? I mean, they don't have that many, because remember, before they signed Ricky Kona, Valerie Mondahano, and Mason Ford, who, by the way, those latter two are still under contract through the end of 2023, they didn't have a lot of players. That was like the whole thing. It's like DD needs players.
Yes.
But they do have some
is irrelevant on tour.
They have some folks up for renewal this year. Chris Clements, Holland Hanley, Macy Vela Diaz. All three of them seem to me like players who could get picked off. Like, we could just see DD not being willing to pay to keep enough to keep them, and they all bounce, and then the team is a little thin again, but has some standard,
more top heavy
type
yes.
team. Yes.
Yeah. I think Holland Hanley is an excellent candidate to go to Mint or Lone Star. The one other category that we've not talked about, this is not as manufacturer specific, it's not as Dynamic Disc, or Texas focused, but just multi-year contracts are ending. Heather Young, though no buzz that I've heard of her coming back to professional disc golf this next season, so seems unlikely right now. But Henna Blomroos, James Conrad, Jeremy Colling, Evelina Salonen, Brodie Smith, Emerson Keith, Sarah Hokum. I think Emerson Keith is the most likely of this list to move, but get rid of Emerson, and who do you think, Emerson and Heather, right? We're not talking about those two. Who do you think is the most likely to move in that group? Because that's a group that has been with their company for a long time.
Somebody's got to throw money at one of the Europeans. I mean, I don't know about both. I think I could see one of them staying with Innova, but I mean, it would be a coup if Innova was able to keep both of them. But like, when you have these two elite Finnish players, and you have all these European companies, including Finnish companies, who are not well represented at the top elite end of the sport, because number one, the Finnish male players aren't quite at that level, and number two, the top two Finnish women are both Innova players. Somebody's going to pay one of them. And I don't really know that I have a sense of who I think is going to make the move. I don't even necessarily know if I think it's that easy to predict which of them is going to have the better career.
No, I don't either. And that's why I think both of them are just such good, legitimate options. Here's my hot take.
Okay.
Clash Discs signs one of the
Clash? Do they have the money
Henna
for that?
Or Evelina.
I don't know. Maybe.
They're a Finnish company.
They're so small still, though.
They've gotten the little bump from Nico, and they are a company that even if not a lot of people are throwing them, people know who Clash discs are. And I think that players like Henna and Evelina have the capacity to help Clash move discs.
I don't see it. I mean, I don't disagree that they could probably help them move discs, but I think this is more of a Latitude Discmania Prodigy situation.
Maybe.
Where
there's my hot take.
Companies that are big established brands in Europe already, and I just think that there's no way that both of those players are going to re-up with Innova unless Innova throws the bag at them. It would shock me. Jeremy Colling, I don't see him going anywhere. James Conrad and Sarah Hokum, hard for me to see them leaving MVP. I'm sort of surprised we haven't heard about their re-ups at this point, to be honest.
So, we're kind of in the what if section. So here's my what if. James Conrad leaves MVP.
Wow.
So real quick, these what ifs, they are counterfactuals that oftentimes we are in discussion and we go, yeah, but that's just such a what if and we're just going to ignore it. The point of this is to explore those.
Yes, I get it. But also we thought we've had these conversations before. That player will never leave such and such company.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we said it about Macbeth.
Yes.
We were clowns. Macbeth's never leave Innova. I mean, it's Innova. And then he was
I wasn't on the show at that point, so I am not going to associate myself with the clowns. There's nothing on record that says I ever said Macbeth will never leave Innova.
So, I mean, what's the concept here is some other company is like, we were going to just throw you so much money, because I feel like MVP is like, they have to pay James Conrad. It's like Innova had to pay Calvin, and they did.
Yep.
They're like, here you go, 5-year deal, let's do it.
Yep.
That's what MVP needs to do with James. But maybe another company is like, hey, we're gonna we'll double your salary, and I think there are companies out there who could offer that kind of money to James, and he'd sell a lot of plastic wherever he goes.
Do you think if James leaves, does MVP continue? Because MVP was not, when we talk about like the big companies that can throw money around and carry a lot of weight, MVP was not included in that list prior to James and the shot. And then he throws that in. And now we talk about MVP in the same breath that we talk about Prodigy and Discmania. And I still think there are MVP probably is not quite as big, but they are a power player as a manufacturer now, without a doubt in my mind. So James Conrad leaves. Do you think that hurts James or MVP more? Who suffers from that breakup?
MVP hurts more from it, but I don't know that either company is really, or either party is going to be like devastated by it.
Okay.
I think MVP has found its people, and they're going to sell discs to those people effectively. Players moving sponsors means they're going to sell a boatload of discs because they have a new shiny toy. On the other hand, we are approaching oversaturation. No, we're not approaching. We are at the point of oversaturation of signature and tour series discs.
Yes.
The companies that figured that out early made a lot of money, and now everybody's doing it. And now it's just like there's 500,000 $30 discs sitting on the shelves. And like, can you really collect them all? I mean, some people can, the super consumers, but I don't know. It would be very interesting if it happened, but I highly doubt it. I think that's one of our least likely what ifs. And yeah, Germ, we already talked about him. He's not going to leave Innova. Brodie is very interesting. I can't get a feel. You asked me 3 months ago, it was said he's gone. He's no way he stays at Discraft. Now I'm like, I don't know. I feel like things seem okay. Like still moving. They got a lot of discs coming out, but I could really see it going either way.
I think the biggest thing about Brodie is that the Get Freaky brand will outlast, and the Dark Horse brand was before Discraft.
Who owns
right?
the IP, right? I think it's probably Brodie.
Probably.
And if he was smart, and he is smart, he probably put it in his contract.
Yes. So those brands are built not from Discraft, right? Those are built from Brodie and the brand that he came to Discraft with, which means that I think it's much more durable than some of these other brands. Like if Nate Sexton left Innova and went somewhere else and tried to make the DD Felon or the Sexton Felon, right? Not the same level, not the same commitment, loyalty. Like his money printing machine will take a severe hit. Brodie could go to another company and carry the Get Freaky brand with him, and I don't think Brodie would suffer significant financial loss. In fact, I think he just expands his market and probably makes more money because of it. And that is unique because of the branding power of Brodie Smith, which is why I think he is always a candidate. And again, Brodie is smart. He's financially savvy. And I guarantee he knows as well as us that moving brands is the best way to make a lot of money. And given that all those kind of marketing influences and factors at play, I think Brodie is even if it's not super discussed or speculated right now, is a candidate. A candidate with a high potential of leaving.
I agree. I mean, and I also think, Brodie has done a great job to get to where he is in the disc golf world. How much higher can he really climb? I think, speaking of what if Brodie Smith wins an Elite Series? Like that feels like the ceiling, right? He wins one Elite Series. That's the ceiling. At his age, with his injury history, this is the chance for him to make a bag, and maybe that's staying with Discraft, but maybe it's making a move. But this is the one where you're like, if you're going to really cash in on your star status as a social media maven and all that, like that he's on the downslope of that, and he's at the age where your physical tools are on the downslope. So you got to take advantage of this window right now.
Question. Do you think, if given the choice, Brodie Smith prefers a big manufacturer, such as, I don't know, we'll say Innova, right? Goes to Innova, or a smaller manufacturer that gives him ownership stake?
I mean, if I'm him, I'm going to take equity.
and like maybe he buys some of that equity, right? But gives him the option to like buy into Mint, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, you'd be crazy not to take the opportunity to get a piece of disc golf ownership at the manufacturing level. I think I mean, you got to maybe pick the right brand, but the industry is just on the upward move, and like consolidation is coming eventually, and that means that you could make a nice return just for having a small piece. I think more players should be trying to get that kind of status when they sign these sponsorship deals. I mean, I think companies probably don't want to give that away, but
no, but someone like Brodie, I could see. I mean, he's got that foundation side, so combining that and getting equity in a company and tying himself to that company for long term, if that's what you want from Brodie, I think could be a way that a smaller manufacturer lands Brodie, even if they can't offer the same kind of upfront payout that something like Innova could.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going all in on the what ifs, hypotheticals for 2023 coming up. The Upshot is presented by Pound Disc Golf, makers of the best bags in the sport. Make sure you check out Pound's Custom Pack Builder, where you can customize every aspect of the bag, from the upper fabric, the lower fabric, the zippers, the sliders, the cords. You can get an Octothorpe, an Octahall, a toolbox, or even a Carlton in custom options. And stay tuned, Rufus Customs coming soon. Go to PoundDiscGolf.com to check out the Custom Pack Builder today. Well, we've already been talking about some hypotheticals as we welcome you back on the Upshot, but we're going to go deeper into some what ifs. What ifs. So, Josh, I'll let you pick the first one. Let's rock and roll. What might happen in 2023?
Yeah, I've got to give credit to Frank. Frank, longtime listener, and writes in frequently with some thoughts and questions for the Upshot. So big shout out and thanks to Frank. He provided the inspiration for this segment by sending in his own what if. And he asks the question, what if Nico wins Worlds next year? This is not at all outside of the realm of possibilities.
Well, there's the Statmando stat recently that Nico is the only player to win an Elite Series or major in the 2000s, the 2010s, and the 2020s. I mean, he's been in this game, and he's been grinding, and he still has it at the top level. He doesn't have it every week, but, I mean, he can really dial it up and play some amazing disc golf. It's not impossible. Like, I don't know if I see Nico winning in Vermont, but if he did, this is all about what ifs.
Yeah.
If he
did you see Greg Barsby winning in Vermont?
I know. Good point.
So anyway,
good point. If he did, I think it would cement him. I mean, he's probably already a Hall of Famer, but it would certainly cement him as that. I think it would rehabilitate his image to a large degree. Winning cures everything, Josh. I think it would make Lone Star, if he's still sponsored by Lone Star at that point, a boatload of money. They would sell a gazillion discs. When people win Worlds, like, it doesn't, you can be a villain and you can still make a lot of money selling discs. And, you know, you win Worlds and it's legend status. And a lot of people are going to forget about all of the drama. Some people won't, but a lot of people will.
Yep, I think so too. I think it probably, it creates a sort of resilience to the off-course or on-course antics, and gives Nico a more of a pass in public perception because of that Worlds win.
All right, let me give you one, Josh. Let's say Ricky wins 2 majors. What if Ricky wins 2 majors next year?
I think 2 majors probably very solidly breaks the narrative about Ricky and the majors. And this is something I said something along these lines this season, that Ricky winning is a way, like right now, Ricky is an antagonist in the Paul Macbeth era, but winning 2 more majors after the big sponsorship change, coming back from Lyme disease, several years ago, and then doing back-to-back Worlds, going through all of this, and coming back and then getting a season with 2 majors, I think that could go a really long way in Ricky's image about how he measures up to the great of this era, being Paul Macbeth.
Does it matter if they're Champions Cup and European Open and he doesn't win Worlds or USDGC?
I think a little bit. But I think 2 helps that, right? If he just wins Champions Cup, like, that's good, and that'll help. But if he wins Champions Cup and Paul wins Worlds, we're going to be right back here in, and I don't care if Ricky's got 3 more wins than Paul does, we're probably going to be talking about, Paul's got Worlds again at this time next season.
Quick, who won Champions Cup MPO this year? Go.
Chris Dickerson.
Oh, that was good. That was good. But my point is, we probably had some listeners go, wait a minute. And it's still the new kid on the block major. And it didn't feel like Chris had a great year, despite the fact that he won a major.
True. Oh,
that's partly because of the bar that he set in the past. But yeah, I think Ricky, any major is big. If he wins 2, it's like time to bury the discussion.
Yep. Yeah.
Of he can't win at the majors.
Yes, exactly. That's the importance of 2 of them.
What's next?
All right. Next one. Prodigy MPO team. Because right now it seems like they're re-signing a lot of them, right? I mean, Gannon's obviously still there. Alden is re-signed.
Can you imagine a world in which Isaac Robinson isn't back? I think he's actually still under contract.
I think so too. The thing about these MPO Prodigy guys is they, don't get me wrong, as they continue to succeed, some of them will get stolen. But right now, these are young players who have a lot of brand loyalty. They've always talked about how they look up to Will Schustrick, and they've been playing with Prodigy for the past 5 years, and they're friends with each other. So it like that group just feels unlikely to move right now. When one goes, I mean, I think it's going to be like dominoes. But if the Prodigy MPO, what if the Prodigy MPO team wins 5+ Elite Series next year?
Wow.
Do you think it looks the same going into 2024?
How did they win this year? 2, right? They got USDGC, and they got Idlewild.
Idlewild. I think that's it.
I mean, number one, obviously, depending on the mix of who wins, like we could be talking about 2 of those guys being top 5 players in the world.
Yes.
And it does not feel like a monstrous stretch for that to be a possibility. I mean, one of our what ifs could be, what if Gannon Buhr wins Player of the Year in 2023? Like that, we could talk about that. I think Prodigy has the most promising young core in MPO without a question.
Yes. Oh yeah.
I mean, these guys are super talented, and you know, Alden Harris doesn't have an Elite Series win yet, but he is showing you that he can get it done. Like I think he's up to over 1030 rated now. It is not a stretch for me. I mean, he was in contention quite a few times this year at big tournaments. I think it means that Prodigy is suddenly looked at as like a powerhouse sponsorship team in a way that they have not.
Almost.
You know, you think about already how much has changed about the narrative around Prodigy compared to the beginning of 2021 or 2022. Mm-hmm. You know, they lose Cat, they lose Dickerson, they lose Matt Oram, and people are like, sky's falling.
Yeah. And
the way that its season has gone, it's like, oh no, like they actually have a really interesting, exciting young players on the team that, you know, obviously exceeded expectations pretty much across the board.
You know who you didn't mention that underperformed?
No.
Kevin Jones.
Oh, obviously.
We're talking about this young core, and they also have Kevin Jones.
And they also have Kevin Jones, who could easily have a bounce back year and win multiple Elite Series. You know, Kevin Jones was just like consistently good instead of having moments of greatness this year. Mm-hmm. And he's obviously a super popular player. I mean, I think more popular than all those guys still. But yeah, I think Prodigy has to feel fortunate that they have all these young guys who are panning out so well, and that we are having this conversation, but it doesn't feel outlandish to say that could happen.
Yeah. All right, which one you got next for me, Charlie?
Next one. What if Ella Hansen wins a major?
Let's see. European Open. Did she go to European Open this year?
I don't think so. Off the top of my head, either. I don't remember that happening.
You know, I think Ella could win European Open. Playing the MPO layout, like she's got the distance that could help overcome some of the other shortcomings in her game. And I think she really could win the European Open. I think, number one, it really legitimizes Ella more so than she already is as being a player to watch and a top contender in the FPO division. And we'll just kind of show that progression of the other aspects of her game besides her distance. But more importantly, it makes Discmania relevant on both sides of the tour. And that's the biggest deal, I think, is that Discmania now not only has the Crush boys, but they also have, the Crush gals, and Ella is establishing herself as a threat and wins a major. And like Discmania's branding is just, it's writing itself at this point. And for Ella to win a major would be such a big deal for Discmania on the FPO side.
Yeah, I think Discmania could just decide to sit out on the Henna Evelina sweepstakes and just be like, Ella's going to be our flag bearer. And that might pay off for them. Because she's still basically on a rookie contract, more or less.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think it would it would upgrade Ella Hansen to a level of conversation that she's not at yet. I think it moves her into the tier 1 category of player. There's not a lot of players with major wins in FPO that are not considered tier 1. I mean, you think back over like the last 10 years, and like who you even put on the list? Paige Shue?
Paige Shue. Yeah, that's the list.
That's probably the list.
Yeah. All right. Next one for you. Paige Pierce announces retirement after next season.
Oh my God.
She comes out, she does a press conference. She says, "Yep, I just don't have that competitive drive in me anymore. I don't enjoy it. I am retiring to work at Discraft in some other capacity. I will not play competitive.
Or just move to Hawaii and chill."
Yeah. Right.
Gosh, it doesn't feel that crazy. I mean, it would be a stunning moment in sports history. It would be who knows how the season would have gone to that point. I can't imagine she would have been dominating as having some of the kinds of seasons she's had in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But almost regardless, she's still going to win multiple tournaments. And, people are down on her this season, but the only player she didn't outperform was Kristen Tatar. Keep that in mind. She would be retiring as the greatest FPO player of all time, to go out basically on top of her game, not just fading out into obscurity into FP40 at someday. It would be the talk of disc golf for weeks. It would be sad. It would be. I think it could make national news. I think you could see her doing interviews about it in sports news websites and magazines. I mean, it like, think about the meta narrative about mental health and the drive to succeed in sports, and we would go back and watch the documentaries again with a totally different lens. It would be shocking and stunning. And given the way that she's talked about disc golf, sometimes it also doesn't feel like it's an impossibility.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I mean, she just is obviously deeply in love with the sport. And
right.
I think the competitive fire tends to come and go a little bit, and that's understandable. But I think, wow, that would be something else.
You know who this kind of reminds me of in the sense, quite not quite the gravity for the sport, but similar sense, Andrew Luck's retirement.
That was crazy.
Right? Comes back from injury. He's only been in the league, 5 years, still considered a top player. And then he's like at training camp and then just like, never mind, I'm out. I like being able to walk more than I like being able to play football.
But I think American football is a different universe because of just the physical toll it takes on the body.
Without a doubt. Yes.
But it's true.
But I agree.
Like similar, but Paige is on a higher tier than Andrew Luck.
Yes, she is. It would be like Patrick Mahomes retiring right now.
And even that maybe is, yeah.
It's closer.
It's closer. Right? It's closer.
Yeah, it's closer to that. But I agree with everything that you said. I think it would really change the discussion about tour life. And when you talk about the interaction between touring players and the pro tour and like tour standards and tour card holder benefits, like I think that discussion could be fundamentally altered by a top player like Paige, especially someone of Paige's caliber choosing to walk away from the sport during her prime.
What if Paige Shue returns and wins an Elite Series again?
I'm trying to decide how likely this is. All right, I want question: Brodie Smith or Paige Shue? Who do you think has a better chance of winning an Elite Series this season?
Paige Shue.
I think if that happens, she re-ups a multi-year contract with, if she doesn't already, with wherever she's at. And when we talk about competitive performances, Paige Shue is included in that discussion. I think there's also a narrative and a meta shift, though, if Paige Shue wins an Elite Series, because it's the sense of and this is a discussion that's being had in tennis, or it was had in tennis when Serena Williams had her kid and then came back to the sport. I think there would be a discussion about how disc golf interacts with families, and especially young mothers who choose to have children and then return to tour after having kids.
It's like, I don't even think that's like a thing that's happened really that much in disc golf at all. I cannot think
of another example. I mean, Kristen?
Yeah.
Kind of. Like, I mean, but
yeah. Like, so think about how much she's sacrificing as a mother to be away from her daughter for stretches of time.
Yeah. So that's the other example.
It feels different with Kristen because her ascent has happened post having a child, right?
Right.
She hasn't been a elite and then stopped and had a child and then come back. So Correct. It feels different.
It does feel different, but that's what I think would be the big significance of Paige Shue winning an Elite Series, is initiating that discussion. Okay, next one. Big sexy commentary. Nate Sexton, Jeremy Colling moved to Disc Golf Network as full-time commentators.
Abandoning Jomez.
Disc golf, or maybe they keep, but whatever. I'm going to say we're
doing what ifs. It's got to be what ifs. It's got to be that.
They abandoned Jomez. Disc Golf Network pays them a ton of money to come over and just be commentary for the entire season. And let's assume they're good at it, right? Because I don't know how much Jeremy Colling's done live.
He's done like one live show.
Yeah. So, but let's assume he gets good at it, right? He practices. He's got that talent that just it moves over, which I know it's harder, but let's assume big sexy commentary is good at Disc Golf Network as well.
Sure.
I don't know, maybe it's an unfair assumption.
I mean, I think that they could be good. I think Germ would have to learn to talk less. It's a very different thing than post-production. Right. Nate Sexton can commentate on anything, anytime.
Yes.
This is such an interesting one. Like, how would this affect Jomez? I mean, I think DGN, whatever, they can hire commentators. They're going to try out different people. They're like much more experimental. They like want to have a lot of different voices. But Jomez is very, I mean, they don't deviate. I actually think in the short term, it would hurt Jomez for obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
In the long term, it would probably be good for them to start to think about having more teams, commentator teams, besides the 3 guys that have done it for every single tournament for months and months and years.
Yeah.
I think there's a risk of tiring people out with the same people on the mic all the time. I think there's a risk of that. Maybe we're already getting there. Like, is there already starting? I feel like I'm seeing some people getting a little tired of the Yuli shtick.
Mm-hmm.
And it has nothing really to do with any of them individually. It's just that when you're constantly the only voice, people are going to start to find things about you that annoy them. I'm sure it happens to people who listen to this podcast, and it starts to bug them. So it would be I don't even like, then I'm like, who would be the commentators for Jomez? Like, I don't know. They like
Brian Earhart
found this, but I mean, he's a DGN guy too, right?
Yeah.
That would be very interesting. I would like to see what Jomez is like with a different commentator situation. But I think it would hurt them in the short term. I think a lot of people would... It may accelerate the trend towards people watching live over post.
Well, I mean, imagine a world where Disc Golf Network says, yep, you can have the media rights, but you can't release the coverage for 1 week until after the tournament's over.
That world's coming, don't you think?
I think so too. So imagine if, because Jomez has 1 more year. So then the year after, Jomez comes back and says, we want to re-up our contract. And DGN says, sorry, your new contract is that you have to wait 1 week after the tournament to release your post-produced. And then Jomez is like, oh crap. And then Disc Golf Network calls Jeremy Colling up and says, hey, we want you to come over with Sexton. We want you to be our commentary team, and we're going to pay you a lot of money to do it. You can go do Jomez if you want to, but like a move at Sexton and Colling as full-time commentators does not feel out of the realm of possibility.
I agree with you. Especially Sexton.
Yes.
Next one. Eagle misses more than half the season again.
He becomes, like, I think you write Eagle as the sports story of the incredibly talented, perhaps in terms of raw talent, the most talented player to ever pick up this game, who just never had the athleticism and durability necessary to be one of the greats.
You think it could happen with just one more season? Like,
that's just so much time.
That's a lot of time.
Now, I mean, don't get me wrong. Eagle could turn around and come back, but if he misses another half of the season, you just have to expect then that this is going to become a career trend for him. That he may come back for a couple seasons, do really well, win a couple majors, win some elite series, and then he's gone for 2 seasons again. And then he comes back for a season and he wins another major, and then he's gone again. Like that's if he misses more than half the season again, that's what I expect is the roadmap of Eagle's career. And it's going to be, the focus will be it'll be the what ifs, right? What if Eagle could stay healthy? That is going to dominate discussion around Eagle's legacy.
Let me give you the other what if then. What if Eagle comes back and wins 2+ majors this year and plays a full season?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, Eagle is one of the most talented players, if not the most talented player to ever pick up this game. Like,
Eagle takes over as the number 1 player in the world. People talk about him as the guy to beat.
Yep. All seem very realistic.
Paul is now below Eagle. Ricky is below Eagle. Calvin is below Eagle. What's crazy is that both worlds seem possible.
Equally possible almost.
I know.
Yeah.
What's next?
All right. So Juliana Korver wins an Elite Series event.
That would be such a W, man. That would be awesome. Like 20 years or whatever since her last Elite Series win, she gets another one. Just cementing her disc sports greatness even further. Not that she needs there's nothing left to prove. I think it's probably more likely that we see JK end up doing more commentary than doing more playing as we move forward here. But if she has a weekend where she putts, anything is possible. Like, she's still got it. I think it would just be like this total celebration. Like, we'd have all these old timers coming out and talking about, when Korver was balling at the, turn of the millennium, and just it would be such a cool connection between the current day of disc golf and the history books, because I don't really think there's a player elsewhere on tour that realistically could win an Elite Series event who was dominant in year 2000 besides Korver. I think she's the only one who could possibly do it.
I mean, we just heard the stat about Nico.
Yeah, but Nico was like 2008, 2009.
Right. No, it's very different.
It's different.
You don't think Scott Stokely has got a chance at winning an Elite Series this season?
He said he'd only compete if he thought he could win, which
that is true.
I don't think he was being truthful about that.
or if he continues to compete this season, is not being truthful.
All right, I got one for you. Kristen Tatar goes winless at the majors. I'm keeping it within the realm of reality here. To say she's going to go winless on the entire Elite Series feels like a little too much of a fake news.
Unless has elbow problems.
Yeah, sure, whatever. But, but let's just say she doesn't win any majors next year. What if?
The season of Kristen Tatar is a fun thing that we reminisce on, and it goes right back to Paige as the dominant best FPO player. The one and this, I feel bad comparing Kristen to this player, but it reminds me of Carson Wentz the year the Eagles won the Super Bowl, when he was on track to win MVP, hurts his back, Nick Foles wins the Super Bowl, and Carson Wentz is just a joke now. Like, he had his one season of greatness, and then it just was gone.
It isn't fair because Kristen has already been good.
Correct. It isn't fair.
But I get what you're saying.
Cam Newton, the year he took Carolina 15-1. Anyway, I'm using other
Derrick
sports,
Rose MVP season.
That's what it feels like. We have, and I think that highlights, though I am bringing in other sports analogies, that is designed to highlight my point, is that we see this in sports where players who are good and have had good seasons before will have seasons that are just MVP, breaking records, and you go, wow, this player is top tier now, and they fall back and you're like, oh, well, they're good, but maybe we got a little bit too excited a little bit too quick. That could happen. I don't think it's likely, but I mean, this is definitely a what if that I don't think is completely unreasonable.
A lot of good players in FPO right now.
A lot of good players. Last one I've got. Kona Panis wins an Elite Series event.
Wow. It would be
She's done it.
Incredibly. I feel like everybody would feel good. Everybody would feel good. Kona would feel good. DD would feel good. Fans would feel good. It would just be a very happy moment because, I mean, unless you're just like a jerk, you're not rooting for Kona to do poorly.
Right.
I think, we know she can. We know she can. Hopefully she takes this off season and tunes up her game. I mean, and I think it would, they'd sell a bunch of commemorative discs. Everybody would be like, wow, this is so great. She's back. It totally erases the narrative of her contract being overblown and bloated, which it might still be, even if she wins an Elite Series. It's possible. Mm-hmm. But at least it feels like all that is justified because it doesn't... The expectations bar matters so much in sports. The expectations now has been set to a level where even if next year she just regularly finishes inside the top 10, it's going to feel like, wow, like Kona's really picking it up. Even though the expectations coming into this year were that she was going to be winning regularly and up in the top 5 on a regular basis. And those expectations were just overblown relative to where she was as a player. And so now that bar has been reset and a win would feel like even more enormous. It will mean more to her to win next year than it would have for her to win this year because of the way this year has gone.
You combine that with the fact that Kona's value comes as a social media presence and her ability to market and brand herself, and for her to have a storyline with an ending like that of the comeback story after the turmoil and difficulty of changing bags, just writes, it writes the social media posts. It writes the vlogs. It writes the discs. It creates the narrative so cleanly that gives value to her as a player that I really think it's very good for her brand to have a really terrible year and then to come back and win again another Elite Series.
Oh man, you could write a book.
You could
write a book.
She might.
All right. Well, those are some what ifs that we've got. We might do some more of these. So shoot us your what if categories. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to do a subscriber bonus segment with more what ifs. So this is a great chance. If you're a subscriber already, send in your ideas. We're going to dive into some more. And if you're not a subscriber yet, this is a great time to send us an email, upshot@ultiworld.com. Get yourself a subscription for less than $4 a month at discgolf.ultiworld.com/subscribe and get ready to go as we head into the 2023 season. So for Josh Mansfield, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you Thursday right here on The Upshot.